Okay. All right. Hello and welcome to this week's meeting for the Node.js API for 18th of March, 2022. Before we get started with our typical track, does anybody have any announcements they would like to make? All right, so then let me share my screen and we will go from there. Share screen. Share. All right, so we will start with our milestones here. And the first issue that we have are the stale issues to discuss. And Michael has been deleting the older ones now. So we should just be able to see the ones that are most recent here. Let's start with this one from 14 days ago. This one has to do with some possibility of outdated documentation. And there is a PR that Nick has opened in order to address this. Comments to class property descriptor to explain that the class property descriptor is a helper class created. And I guess we can quickly look at this real quick. All right, property descriptor for use with object wrap and instance wrap. This is different from the standalone property descriptor because it is specific to each object wrap and instance wrap subclasses. This prevents using descriptors from a different class when defining a new class, preventing the callbacks from having incorrect this pointers. Descriptor is a helper class created with object wrap and instance wrap format. More reference. Let's see. All right, this looks good to me. Since I've just taken this time to look at that. And if you guys want to, you can also go on your own time and take a look at that. So then that should address that stale issue. Then I put this one up here. Yes, this is the one that we had discussed because this is also based off of this documentation with defined properties. So then this should be good, except I think this is a different use case. This is a different documentation problem, I believe. Let's see. This is the same. Okay, yes. So just to recap a little about what this issue was, is that when you're using property descriptors, you have to have the data that points to the name of the descriptor. It has to be a valid pointer up until you call the define class method. Otherwise, you can get unbounded pointers and whatnot. And so that's what this PR is about here. Which take the property descriptors, values of functions. Okay, there's a typo here. Okay. The name used for the getter function, the name getter and setter. Okay. The only thing that I see is this little typo here. So typo. So I will go ahead and request changes on that. All right, but the main point that was added is this here. It's a responsibility of the caller to maintain the pointer until the property descriptor object is no longer used. I wonder if it would be better also to clarify no longer used means that you've called the define class method. Otherwise, there may be some discrepancies onto saying, what does it mean to be no longer used? Yeah, I think I will also point that out as well.
It's like a responsibility of maintain the pointer. Probably need to be a little bit more specific. Kind of what does it mean maintain a pointer? It means like probably keep the string alive or something like this.
Right.
So,
And then to no longer be used. Say maybe specify that it needs to be alive until define class is called. As no longer used is a little maybe ambiguous. Now I'll just put that as a single comment there. Okay, so that handles those documentation updates there. Then let's see. This one is, yes, the agenda cast. I believe this is one that you were originally looking at. Have you had any time to look into this issue any further?
And in recent weeks, I'm looking at another PR, so I don't have a chance to take on this.
Okay, it's not a problem. Then we have, let's see, this one, marking methods as const. I think this has been one that's been brought up a couple of times. The issue is closed. Does that mean that the PR was merged?
yeah,
Yes.
it seems like Michael last Friday he noticed stuff.
All right, so then we can remove this comment. This one here, mark, okay. I don't have the ability to remove it. So we'll just have Michael remove that next week then. And then I think that's it. Everything else is strike through. Okay. So then we can move on from that. Tracking issue, modules ported. Let's see. There's nothing been added here. But we usually do node add-on API just to take a look at the graph. Okay, and that's that. 6.5 million, not too bad, I suppose. Then we can move on, driving towards full coverage. Did anyone else join the participants? Jack or anyone? I think Jack has been the one working on full coverage. Guess not. Then I do know that we've created an issue for adding code coverage. I'm guessing there's been no work done on this, but the thought is to use the same, I think it's gconf or I think that's what it is. Yeah, in order to get programmatic coverage of our code instead of always having to update manually some markdown or some issues or things like that. So hopefully eventually we'll have that working and that'll be good. Enable debug testing for add-ons. This is something that Michael has been working on, and I don't think there has been any additional work since then. So we'll just wait for next week to see if he has any updates on that. Burn down list of issues raised by module owners. So this is obviously a really old issue, but let's see. Worker threads, they need to be context aware. Okay. This, I think, was the issue of the finalizers that you have been working on, Vladimir.
Yes, I'm getting this PR become close, like it was kind of different thinking how exactly what needs to be done there. Like it's still kind of in draft, and I'm preparing some major change to this approach. So idea would be like instead of creating this finalizer queue, it's what I was thinking about. Like I'm trying to address the core of the issue. Partly before we used to run finalizers as a part of a second garbage collector pass. And because these finalizers can throw some JavaScript exceptions, we moved this finalizer runs instead of set immediate. So if any exception is raised, this exception will be part of this unhandled exception handler inside of Node.js, instead of popping up in some random Node API calls. But I think like we can have alternative solution to it. So instead of running them from a set immediate, we can still run them from GC second pass. But if we have any kind of exception, rather than bubbling them through with Node API call functions, random functions, we can call the same unhandled exception handler from Node. And also on top of it, we can add where I'm adding this new finalizer exception handler per module. So I think every module owner can choose to handle these exceptions the way they want, or otherwise it will be handled as today through unhandled exceptions. And unhandled exceptions, effectively, if we have a handler, if it can be even written inside of JavaScript. So it can be handled inside of JavaScript. If it's not handled on the process level, it will cause abort. It actually causes Node to be destroyed.
Right. I guess that was one of the questions that I have, but I think you answered it. And that was, what if the developer does not add the module level uncaught exception? And then I believe it would just continue to behave as it would by calling the process event for uncaught exception. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So then there's no major change that's needed in order to implement this behavior of the calling of how it already is. There's no like, basically the registration of your module level exception handler is optional. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
If you don't do it, it will behave exactly as today. The only difference will be that these finalizers will be called as a part of GC second pass instead of from set immediate.
Right. Okay.
Which will address this issue that I was originally raised by the developer in this 1140, like
right. This,
issue 1140.
the memory leak. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds good.
It was interesting. Like I went through several kind of loops how exactly should be kind of handled, but because I didn't really understand kind of reason why we have current behavior. But now I think I have better understanding, and I think we have better solution.
Okay. Then let's see, then we can go to regular issues. So Michael opened this one up, I guess, today. There is a hang in one of the thread safe calls, thread safe tests. I do know that since these they run asynchronously, it may not actually be this one that's failing. I have seen it happen in the past where it's actually the previous one. But I guess one of the questions that I had, because he says that it's consistent on Debian 8, I'm wondering if, like, how long it's been occurring as a problem. And I tried to look into sort of the build runs, but I'm not too familiar with this whole interface here. But then the main thought that I had in order to see what the problem is try to migrate the code from Node add-on, the test from Node add-on API to the underlying Node API at the C level to see if it's an issue either in the core or within the Node add-on API wrapper. And since I said it could be this one or it could be this one, I think it may need to be done on both. So I'll just leave that as a comment as to sort of what we're thinking here. Because this test has been around since the existence of the type thread safe functions. And then these tests are actually, I guess, ports of existing thread safe function, the first implementation one. So I think it's a little odd for these to be broken by the wrapper. So there may be something underlying in the core. But of course, we'd need to implement it in the C-level APIs in order to verify that. So what I would like to know is how long have the tests been failing? It seems consistent on that. These tests are a port of the TSFN. Unless it was also failing on TSFN. Maybe writing the test in the Node API. Or the core itself. Okay, so that's all that I'll really say here. And then we can take a look at this when time permits. So I'll make a comment on that. Then let's see, this one here, I have been working on. I did finish the formatting of the JavaScript files. So now I have to do the same for the C++ files. And then basically the approach that I'm taking is running the ESLint fix for the whole code base, and then going through the non-automatically fixable ones, which are mainly talking about casing, unused variables, preferring const, the triple equals, and then these no lone blocks here. There's a couple of no evals, but that's part of the test. So some of these are just being put as a disable linting of that rule in this specific test. Camel case, removing of unreachable code. Again, some unused variables. And so basically what I'll do is when I create the PR, I'll also put this log that I have here so that we can easily know what had to be changed manually. So I finished the JavaScript side, and now I just have to do the C++ side. All right, we discussed the memory leak already. We hinted at the code coverage earlier today. I think this one, we were asking for clarification or either a full repro. Okay, because that's what I asked here. I mean, it's still a little difficult to understand because this is, I mean, it's not really runnable in this state. So it would be nice to get it as a reproduction, a repo that can reproduce it. So I'll just ask again for Raphael. What did I say? Yeah, I don't want to say the exact same thing though. Can you provide your code in a repo for us to run and look at? Okay. How about that? All right. I think this one we already commented on, talking about to use the thread safe functions. Right. Okay. So the developer was expecting that when the thread safe function is created, that that you're able to actually run that code that the thread safe function is using on the same like tick or whatever that you've created the thread safe function. And then so what he said is that what he was sort of expecting is that when you can start the thread, that the JavaScript in that thread would also run. But what he was seeing is that all the threads were first getting started, and then this exited main function calls, and then his thread safe functions get called. And I explained that's because the way that is creating the thread safe function in the same tick, and all of the requests to run the thread safe function, they get queued up until there's a free cycle. So basically his JavaScript code was still running, which was creating all of these threads, and then that piece of code had to stop so that the thread safe functions could actually empty their queue. And that's sort of what I described here. And I think what he was sort of requesting now was maybe put some, like, I guess, document that behavior. And I think that may be worthwhile, because I guess it's not completely understood that that's how that would behave, that the thread safe function, like you have to end your current execution cycle of wherever the thread safes are being created in order for that queue to be processed. And then the follow-up question he had was this make callback. And to be 100% honest, I am not exactly sure what the make callback is supposed to be used for. I think it has to do something with calling it in an async fashion, like if you're not in a current JavaScript scope or something like that. Does anybody have any additional insights onto that? Let me pull up the documentation. I think it's in here. Function, click. I think it's here. Calling it after returning. I mean, that's, yeah, that's, I mean, it's documented here, but I guess we don't particularly have an example of when you are in an async operation. Let's go here. Let's see what they say here. Do we have an example? Because I don't think I've seen make callback actually being used in any of the examples. I can quickly do a search. Let's just do a search. Function start etc. Async context. Right. Okay. I mean, I guess all that we can really do is explain to him sort of what the documentation says and go from there. So let me say for the first one, the above behavior in that your current execution cycle where TSSN gets created must exit before the TFSN's queue can be processed. And then 2, I will just point to this here. When JS from asynchronous operation. Don't really know what else to say regarding that. Call method is used when there's already a function on the stack. No, I don't know if I can put a quote in here like that. Yes. Okay. I guess that is all that I will say. Does anybody else have anything else they would like to add? Okay, I'll go ahead and comment that. Okay. Class constructors cannot be invoked without new. I think there was a PR that we had in order. Yes, this one here. And this was approved. And I think it was merged. Yes, so we can say that this landed. Okay. And we are back one. Yes. Okay, and we're going to close. Okay, this, I think, I don't recall what this one is. Constructor must explicitly initialize the base class. Okay, yeah, that is part of what we do. Then when I run yarn, okay. Okay, so he's got, I mean, he didn't, I forked NVIDIA canvas because he's trying to go for NAND to node add-on API. Okay, constructor must explicitly initialize the constructor. That's because you need to pass, isn't it the environment as the second argument when you do an object wrap? Let's see. We can go to here. Pretty sure that's what it is. So we want to look at this callback info. Yes, okay. So we can link to this example here. January, oh, it's been a while, okay. See from, if you look at the object wrap, oh, not that, this. To pass the callback info argument to the object wrap constructor. Simple enough. Okay. We're not going to go through all of these issues, obviously. Let's jump over to the core to see if there's any, does anybody have anything here that they would like to explicitly bring up?
Last time we discussed about this macro issue and with special section about this XCU, CRT XCU. Promise that I'm going to work on it, but I didn't have a chance to work on it yet. But I did some notes after that. So technically, there is a Stack Overflow article which says exactly how it needs to be done. So technically, I kind of my plan is actually try to go.
We can take a quick look at this.
If you scroll down a little bit, this first answer. So technically, proposal here is that if we use C++, we don't do anything fancy. For any kind of compiler, we can just simply use normal static initialization. Okay, see if they have C++. So we can just do this. It will be like any compiler. But if it's MSVC compiler and we have C language, then we do this very kind of fancy stuff with XCCU. And then for other compilers, we're using the standard, we're using kind of non-standard, but attribute constructor.
Okay. And then we're going to sort of bring this, use this methodology instead of just always having that section used.
Right. So currently we either using this XCU or we use attribute constructor in other compilers, GCC and Clang. But
okay. Right. So I guess you're concentrating on the finalizer issue first before moving over to this.
Yeah, but
it makes sense.
I hope that my finalizer will be finished up soon, and this week I will be able to address this issue as well.
Okay. Let's see. The call.js method ignores user exceptions. Node.js exception from the async callback. Yeah. Okay. Uncaught exception handling. Yes, that's been around for a bit here. So this PR is still open. Legendicast, is there anything that you need from us to move this forward?
I'm still waiting for the reply from Anna that how she would like this PR to be shipped. So the point is I still didn't get her suggestion on why we need to do more modifications to this PR since we didn't change any synchronous or asynchronous callback in this PR. So I'm still waiting for Anna's reply.
Okay. All right, sounds good to me.
To me, it sounds like this change is pretty much what I'm doing with my PR as well. Like that's
right. This could be closely related since you're also working on uncaught exceptions.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, when you, if you could also look on my PR after, I'll include you in the comments so we can see a new version. Because we kind of touching, sounds like both PRs touching exactly the same code, at least about finalizers.
Let's see. Yeah, there's finalizer stuff happening. So we need to make sure enforce uncaught exceptions policy. Yeah, so since you're also touching that, Vladimir, it'd be beneficial to sort of get an understanding of how both of these PRs come into play and if there would be any conflicts from them.
Okay.
All right. And everything else is pretty old. Okay. And I guess that's it. Does anybody else have anything else that they would like to bring up or discuss before we close it for the week? I did have one thing. Vladimir, you had posted that discussion about versioning, right? Did we ever have a discussion about this with the team?
No, we didn't really talk about it, and I tried to bring it in my latest PR, but decided it's too much. Like so I can. But ideas was that if we want to change some behavior or we want to fix some bugs with an existing function, so instead of creating a new function, what if we provide some kind of feature? It's like imagine some kind of a bit. We're saying like this bit set or not set, depending on this bit, we can pick functionality. And then try to implement something like this. I found that it's not so easy to provide default behavior, because apparently our native modules have different entry points. My initial inclination was we have some structure called NAPI module, NAPI underscore module.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end of the structure, we have 4 reserved pointers. So I was hoping that I can use one of them. And this approach works, but it seems like we have alternative ways to create modules. And that's what I actually want to kind of discuss with people who know more about Node.js native modules. What I would say, my question, what are all possible ways people can create modules today? They can register native modules.
Right, I see. Okay. I didn't know there were multiple ways. But I guess, you know, because I primarily just work on the add-on wrapper, so it's kind of limited in that sense. Maybe there's some additional underlying ways that it could be done that I personally am not aware of. So then, yeah, maybe we can bring this back up for discussion then next week when we have more of the team online.
Mm.
Okay.
But let's say if you do you have any thoughts about this subject yourself?
Yes. Well, with my thought, I was not sure like how the user, how the developer would sign up for these additional features or setting these features on and off, and how we would guard in our code for those features, saying that if you're using this feature set, then this is the behavior and whatnot. But I guess you kind of hinted using that reserved pointer for a functionality of some sort. I mean, I think it's not a bad idea, you know, to have additional feature sets, but I'm just not sure the best way to make it be ABI stable, if that makes sense. Where if we do make some sort of changes to the so like, I guess can't really explain sort of what I'm thinking here. But like if we are changing the behavior of the functions, you know, that should be fine, but we need to make sure in terms of ABI stability, you know, because if we're not changing the prototype, the inputs or the outputs or anything like that, then it should be okay in the stability standpoint. But we need to make sure that we're able to still, like, I'm not sure how those functions would change in order to check that the user has turned on and or off these various features, if that makes sense.
So basic idea is that we create an environment to each module. So whenever we create a new module, new native module, we create an environment for it. So technically, we can have all different feature flags to be defined per module, right? So an idea is that imagine that I, for example, want to fix this get all properties function. This get all properties function today does not process. I think it's a configurable flag, does not process configurable flag today. There is a bug, right? But if somebody already relies on this buggy behavior, if I fix this bug, people will be broken, right?
Right.
So imagine that. So what I was thinking in this context, I can introduce a special kind of feature bit and saying that do you would prefer to have fixed behavior or unfixed behavior? And say in all new versions, people will start to use fixed behavior. But if people want to use newer versions of API but still rely on old ones, they can set this special bit saying, I still want to have buggy behavior. Right?
Right. Okay. And then in those NAPI function calls, those would check the module environment for that feature flag. Okay.
Right. So inside of this
That makes
function,
sense.
we check environment, like if this bit set, and depending on this bit, we can say we go to this fixed route or we follow this unfixed route.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that sounds stable to me. So we can just continue to gather input from the rest of the team to see what everyone else thinks then.
And I technically have this machinery being implemented, but I still need to have scenario. I probably will do it in this example for this configurable filter for get all properties. Because right now there is a bug. We pass in parameter configurable filter, but internally we're using a variable filter.
Yeah, sounds like a bug to me. Okay. Then yeah, that's really the last thing that I wanted to bring up. To make sure that it's not lost and it's still on the table for things to discuss.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody have anything else before we close it for the week?
No.
All right. Then everyone have a good weekend, and I will see you guys online and in the meeting next week.
See you.